Okay, guys. So thanks for coming today. Okay, we're gonna start the rosary talk. So I think the main reason actually, okay, not really the main reason, but one of the angles I came at when I was making this particular presentation was I started to realize that a lot of the talks on the rosary, right? Actually, I mean, if you go to the websites and all that kind of thing, you see like the same few old stuff always being put out there. It's like Saint Dominic got the rosary, how to pray the rosary, that sort of thing. Like the Battle of Lepanto and that kind of thing, which is all good, right? But after like you see like five different websites saying the same thing, after a while it kind of gets like there's a lot more things out there about the rosary, right? It's not actually being said. Okay, there's a lot of way more cool stuff instead of like there's like the same 10 quotes being used like in every website, right? So I just wanted to share about stuff that's really powerful, but it's not really there so much. And if people knew about it more, I think like I don't know, every Catholic would just be on their knees praying the rosary. Yeah. So just a quick introduction about myself, right? So I was baptized when I was 20, and I'm not that old. It's not very long ago, lah. Okay. And I'm also a convert from Protestantism, lah. Okay. So the gist of it is just that when I was when I was attending this Pentecostal church, lah. Okay, at that point I wasn't very big on denominations, but one of the people, yeah, one of the people left lah from the church, and then I asked my friend, "Hey, why the guy leave?" And then he's like, "Oh, he left because uh he left for doctrinal reasons. So he disagreed with what the church thought, so he went to another church." So basically, this got opened up to me the whole idea of like different denominations. I thought we were all just one big gang of Christians or something, but they were united. But actually, we aren't. Uh, so because of that, I asked God, like, oh God, if they all contradict each other, right, there has to be one that's at least the most correct, right? So just let me know now so that when I go to heaven, I don't have to realize that I was wrong the whole time while I was on earth, kind of thing. So eventually, I made that prayer. Then I researched into the stuff, and eventually, I came across like Catholic videos, Catholic answers, and that kind of thing. And after I was quite anti-Catholic at that point, lah. But as I keep looking in and keep asking questions, hoping that Catholics would be wrong, I started to realize that they actually keep giving good answers back. So after like months and months of like doing my own research and that kind of thing, then eventually I started realizing that I think Catholicism is true. So that opened up my heart a bit more, and then a whole bunch of other stuff happened. But basically, then I became Catholic, lah. Okay, yeah. So then, of course, the Rosary was a very big part for me, more of like my second conversion. Like the initial part when I was acknowledging that Catholicism is true, I didn't really look. I didn't know about the Rosary so much. But then I started realizing that there's a whole bunch of vices I have that I couldn't quite overcome, like battle with lust and that sort of thing. I think a lot of guys actually struggle with that. Catholic, the pious Catholics and the non-Catholics also, they all struggle with it. When I was a Protestant, I struggled with it quite a bit, but once I started praying the Rosary, or at least like the complete Rosary, right, it was so easy to like overcome those vices, and it's like within like 1 or 2 months, right, what I couldn't do in like so many years, right, just like instantly like that. So it's just like magic, except it's better than magic because it's a grace. So yeah. Okay, yeah. Okay, so the scope, right, is I'm just gonna give a quick intro on Marian devotion, right? Because Mary and the Rosary. Then I'll give like the testimony of what the saints, Marian apparitions, magisterium, the popes have said. Then once we see like what the external authorities have sort of said, then we look at the intrinsic appeal of the Rosary, the internal perfection of the Rosary. Yeah, yeah. So then we'll take a look at that. Then we'll talk about some tips for praying the Rosary and some things to keep in mind. Then there's the Q&A lah. Okay, and then so yeah, okay, so this is the Marian devotion part. So just some quick outlines, right? It's an ancient practice of the church. So it derives all its importance from Mary's relation to Christ as his mother. So Mary is the mother of God, right? And that's like the foundation for all her other titles also. And like St. Thomas says, like in a certain sense, because of the fact that she's the mother of God, she has a certain infinite dignity. Okay, the infinite dignity. Because it reaches to the order of the incarnation, the hypostatic union, right? Because Jesus got his human nature from Mary. Oh, yeah. So
No, please go ahead.
So yeah. Yeah, so we grow closer to Christ as we grow closer to Mary. They don't compete with one another. And so you can see from this magisterial document, okay, it's like authoritative document from the church. Mary belongs indissolubly to the mystery of Christ. And she belongs also to the mystery of the church from the beginning, from the day of the church's birth. So it's not like some made up thing. It came along in the medieval ages. I heard some of my Catholic friends say, oh, what if it just got made up in the Middle Ages or something like that? Right? It's not. She was there from the beginning. You see, the Catechism says like Marian devotion is intrinsic to Christian worship, right? And yeah, she was there at Pentecost also, and she received the Holy Spirit before the apostles at the during the Annunciation when the Holy Spirit overshadowed her. Yeah. So the Rosary is the devotion to Mary, which always leads her to a son. It is the devotion. It's not like one devotion amongst many devotions. Of course, there's many devotions, but you see what the saints say is like there's a primacy of the Rosary there. And Mary always points us to Christ, and she is the best and fastest way to Christ. You can see this other a quote from St. Pius X. Or can anyone fail to see that there is no surer or more direct route than by Mary? There's no surer or direct route, right? And this is what you see in like a whole bunch of other writings of the saints and other authoritative teachings. So Marian devotion is not just like a side thing that you want to do also. There is a great force behind it. You'll see other teachings also that Mary is a dispenser of all graces. Through her, I obtain every hope, every grace, and all salvation. Right. And there's at least 17 magisterial documents, right, also saying the same thing, at least 17. Right. And yeah, if it's repeated often, these magisterial documents, it means that they can actually be defined as part of the church's definitive teachings as well. So it's part of the universal ordinary magisterium. It's this thing. But anyway, you can see even what Vatican II says. Everyone should have a genuine devotion to Mary and trust his life to her motherly care. And Mary occupies the highest place and the closest to us after Christ. Yeah. And so you can see like that she's our most gracious advocate. So it's like hyperdulia and dulia. You can see that actually the common opinion of theologians actually, right? Because I didn't actually know about this, but I wish more people knew. Like she has more grace than all angels and saints combined. The common opinion is actually that the theologians is that from an immaculate conception already, she has more grace than all the angels and saints combined in their consummated glory. Right. So there's a high amount of grace. So maybe just a quick analogy to explain it is like no matter because God decided to have Mary as his mother, right? No matter how many friends you have, right, they can never equal your mother. No matter how many servants you have, right, they can never equal your queen. And God gives grace proportionate to the vocation he calls you to. So if he calls you to the highest vocation of being his mother, right, he'll give you that grace proportionate to it, which is greater than, I guess, all other saints combined. But yeah, and she's also the mediatrix of all grace. That's a possible dogma. Okay, so she's the one that she intercedes for us. So that's in that sense, she's also a mediatrix for us. She prays for us, and she's also a mediatrix because she cooperated with her son's redemption, because she was the one that received him brought him to term, and also was at the foot of the cross and all that sort of thing. Yeah, yeah. But okay, so although she's like the greatest of all creatures, she's also the most approachable of them all. Right. So you see what Saint Louis de Montfort says here. If you put all the love of all the mothers into one heart, it would still not equal the love of the heart of Mary for her children. So we have such a powerful advocate for us. So everybody should have a devotion to her, or at least get to know her in some way. Yeah. Okay, so now this is the rosary part of the talk. So now we'll look at what has heaven said about the rosary. What did the spiritual authority say about the rosary? So some common sentiments about the rosary I hear sometimes. Okay, like this. Oh, it's a nice, cute prayer. Well, the rosary is good, I guess. It's all right. You can pray if you want. Oh, the rosary is good, but don't spread too much. It's only for some people. That's sort of thing. It's a bit of a lame, mediocre response that you get. I mean, I feel like the people who say this kind of thing, they're not like bad people, but at the same time, it does like injustice to the rosary if you see what is actually being said about it. So what we want to ask is, what does heaven actually say about the rosary? So Our Lady, the saints, the popes, and the magisterium have consistently urged for the rosary's recitation and exhort its like singular efficacy. So Fulton Sheen says, the power of the rosary is beyond description. Beyond description. So now let's see what like Our Lady said. Okay. You can see from like the 18th century onwards, right? Almost every major church approved apparition, right, has always had Mary asking for the rosary explicitly. Most of it is explicitly. Some of them are implicitly. Like for example, in Lourdes, Our Lady appeared to Saint Bernadette with a large rosary on her right arm. Okay, and she asked her to pray the rosary with her together. And the rest of them, they're just like explicitly saying it, like pray the rosary every day for example, in Fatima, in like Our Lady of Jodswold in Poland, she said pray the rosary zealously. Basically just say pray the rosary, pray the rosary, pray the rosary over like the last 200 years, every single time. So I mean, if she's saying it all the time, and this one particular thing, right, then I guess she really wants us to pray the rosary. It's also God who's asking it of us through her, right? Because God's the one that's orchestrating the whole Marian apparition thing. So it's something to take note of. But I think it's like, oh, it sounds great, right? But actually, if we see some of the writings from Sister Lucia, when she said to Father Fuentes, the Most Holy Virgin is very sad because no one has paid any attention to a message. Neither the good nor the bad. The good continue on their way without giving any importance to a message. The bad not seeing the punishments of God actually falling upon them, continuing their life of sin. When what struck me for this, right, is like obviously uh the bad will keep doing the bad stuff. But when you said neither the good nor the bad, because even the good don't do it, right, then that's even worse, right? And she said, believe me, Father, God will chastise the world and this will be in a terrible manner. And because Our Lady of Fatima said that we can avoid World War II if, I guess, enough people listen to her. But World War II still happened, right? That means there are not enough people listening to her. You can see, like, Our Lady is crying. Like, Our Lady of Akita, like, the miracle is basically just her crying. That's the miracle, that she's crying, and she asked us to pray the rosary. Our Lady of Kabeho, supposed to be that, she appeared again to, like, 3 visionaries before the Rwandan genocide, okay? And she said that we can avoid it if you all pray the rosary. So it's kind of like avoiding World War II again, but Rwandan genocide. And in the end, Rwandan genocide did happen, right? So it's a bit sad, right? That it still it happens, but it's kind of neglected still. And yeah, you can see this like cool photo here. Okay, it's a bit difficult to see, but you kind of see like this is one of the French testing of the atomic bomb. You can see like image of Christ crucified here and Our Lady right here on right here. Okay, it's a bit hard to see from here. But anyway, so you can see what St. Louis de Montfort says. As long as priests followed St. Dominic's example and preached devotion to the Holy Rosary, piety and fervor thrived throughout the Christian world. But since people have neglected this gift from heaven, all kinds of sin and disorder have spread far and wide. So for St. Louis de Montfort, it's not like, oh, if you don't pray the Rosary, it's like, okay, it's like B plus, not bad. If you pray the Rosary, A plus. It's not like that. You say if you pray the Rosary, if everyone prays the Rosary, A plus. If y'all don't pray the Rosary, it's like F minus kind of thing, like just F. So that's what I'm saying. And see what Our Lady of Fatima also says. If my requests are not granted, Russia will spread her errors. And then she also said there will be another great war that happened. I mean, that's exactly what happened, right? The Cold War and all that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, it's like it seems like Our Lady is asking for the rosary, but there's this sense that we get that it's not also what she wants is not really being delivered as well. You can see also like the rosary's power and efficacy. So you see there's this Hiroshima miracle where there were like 8 Jesuits being stationed at this church of Our Lady of Assumption in Hiroshima. And they were living like 8 blocks from the ground zero where the bomb blast. Yet, right, every one of them survived without any uranium or anything, which is impossible at that distance. It's not possible from that distance because you get like atomized, right? But all of them survived, and they were also helping out the other people. But this is a miracle, and you can see what Father Hubert Schleifer says here. In that house, every day the Holy Rosary was recited together. So through the rosary, right, basically, they were being saved. And this kind of miracle, right, like being saved from a nuclear blast, like you won't really hear about this kind of miracle happening for like associated with any other form of I don't know, prayer or whatever. This is like the devotion that kind of gives you like all those crazy miracles with the rosary. Yeah. And so you can see that Father Hubert Schleifer is that prayer is more powerful than the atomic bomb, right? So if she can protect us from an atomic bomb, right, then what else can she not do for you, right? It's a rosary. It's just that powerful. Okay, so now we move on to what the saint said. So we look at what Mary said. She's obviously asking for the rosary. What the saint said. So you can see what some of the lines from the saints, right? I want this Saint Francis de Sales. I want the rosary said every day with as much love as possible. And see Saint Louis de Montfort. A priest who daily prays and preaches the rosary will do more good in 1 month than that of other preachers in several years. And Saint Pius X. Amidst all prayers, the rosary is the most beautiful, the richest in graces, the one that most pleases the most Holy Virgin. You see Mother Teresa also, the most effective and powerful attractions for being united to God in Dominic one day through the rosary and the scapular Our Lady will save the world. Which is interesting because in Our Lady of Fatima, she also showed the brown scapular and she also obviously asked for the rosary. It's kind of like, I mean, it seems like a prophecy also that kind of connected to Our Lady of Fatima, which is interesting. And then you see there's a whole bunch of quotes. I just spam a whole bunch of quotes just to rein it in. The St. John Bosco. You can strike, conquer, destroy all hell's demons. There's no problem that we cannot overcome. Then St. Padre Pio, of course, the weapon for our times. Then no one could ever be taken to be a good Christian who does not say the rosary. Then just more. St. Francis de Sales. St. Charles Borromeo. I depend on the rosary almost entirely for the conversion and sanctification of my diocese. And there's like a whole bunch of other stuff. The catechism also. The rosary is an epitome of the whole gospel. It's a compendium of the whole gospel. Catechism of St. Pius X. The devotion that the church specifically recommends is the Holy Rosary. It's just like, just to spam and way more stuff, and more, and more, and more. Okay, now, well, okay, so yeah, yeah. I mean, there's really like hundreds of quotes, but obviously, I kind of 100 slides. Right? So, you see what Saint John Paul II says. It will be almost impossible to name all the many saints who discovered in the Rosary a genuine path to growth in holiness. So you see these saints, like Saint Francis de Sales, for example, he was the Bishop of Geneva. He converted like 40,000 Protestants, although he was like kind of like the only Catholic there. And he set up rosary confraternities in every part of his diocese. Okay, and obviously he prayed 3 rosaries every day also. Saint Teresa of Avila, she's called the Doctor of Prayer. She prayed the rosary from throughout her whole life since she was young. Her mom taught it to her. And she also talks about how she once went into a state of ecstasy, a rapture, a transport into heaven for praying the rosary. Saint Francis Xavier, he obviously when he was in Japan converting, all the other people, right? He prayed the rosary every day and he healed people by the touch of the rosary. Saint John Vianney, he is the patron saint of priests. He prayed the rosary every single day with his parishioners and he wore it around his neck. Saint Faustina, she prayed 15 decades of the rosary every single day also, right? And it's not just Mary appearing to her. So it's not Jesus only appearing to her, although that's what she's associated with because of divine mercy. But Jesus also appears to her. Mary also appears to her many times. That's why she has a strong devotion to the rosary. Saint Padre Pio, he prayed like at least 15 rosaries every day, up to probably way more, I used to say like up to 40, but actually he prays like way more than 40 rosaries. Like maybe like 100 probably. 100 rosaries. At first I was like, how is that even possible? But I guess it's possible because he prays it throughout the night. And I guess they pray faster. But basically you get the point. He's praying it all the time. St. John Paul II also prayed like apparently 4 rosaries every day. And he said the rosary is his favorite prayer. And he also instituted a whole year on the rosary. And obviously, he gave us the luminous mysteries. St. John Bosco also, he got his oratory boys to pray the rosary every single day. And I can multiply this also, like St. Jose Maria Escriva. He wrote a whole book on the rosary in one day. And he obviously the Opus Dei people, they pray the rosary every day. St. Alphonsus and the Redemptorists, they wear the 15-decade rosary on them. And St. John Baptist de La Salle, he's called the rosary priest because the rosary is always in use, always in his hand. So basically, like, you see the saints rosary. You can see what Frank Duff says here, right? Founder of the Legion of Merit. I wonder, has there been any saints since the 13th century who did not use the rosary? Which is interesting point to give, right? So because the saints are always using the rosary. So you see how big it is in their lives. Yeah. So what the popes and the church has officially said. So the prayer of the rosary is perfect. So over 42 popes, right, have urged its recitation. Many have wrote about it in the official capacity. Like just now we saw like the magisterial documents, right? And some even pray 3 rosaries daily. Like Pope St. John the 23rd, like this one here. He prayed 3 rosaries every day. Pope Leo XIII is called the Rosary Pope because he wrote like at least 12 encyclicals on the Rosary. Pope John Paul II also prayed 4 rosaries every day. We saw Father Callaway's book, right? Apparently Pope Francis also prays 3 rosaries every day because he was inspired by Pope John Paul II when he saw him while he was still a bishop. Yeah, and St. Pius X also. You can see even like the church's canon law here. Like religious seminarians and clerics, priests, right? They're all supposed to pray always be formed by the rosary. Just this part of the canon, church's canon law, right? So that's a really big thing. I didn't even know that until like more recent times. But there's a reason why the church asks us to do this kind of thing, right? I mean, at least for all these priests and seminarians. Oops. Yeah, so you can see the church's magisterium also. I highlighted it in red because I just want to let you know this is the official teaching authority of the church. These writings are like more authoritative than like I guess a random catechism because the catechisms are authoritative insofar as they represent these writings properly. So these are the official teachings of the church. You can see what Pope Leo XIII says. It's mainly to expand the kingdom of Christ that we look to the rosary for the most effective help. The spirit of prayer and practice of Christian life are best attained through the devotion of the rosary. And may the beads of the rosary be in the hands of all. And so you can see what St. John Paul II says here, because some people might be like, if that's the case, is the church just forcing everybody to pray the rosary? You see what St. John Paul II says? While respecting the freedom of the children of God, because the church obviously always respects your freedom, the church has always proposed certain practices of piety to the faithful with particular solicitude and insistence. And among these should be mentioned the recitation of the rosary. So of course the church always respects your freedom, but of course because he's a shepherd, right? So he has the right to recommend to us what he knows is really good for us. Yeah. And there's so many more quotes. There's like 50 more quotes or something. That's saying the similar idea. And so you see like these like mediocre sentiments on the rosary. right? Where exactly is it coming from? Because it's not really coming from the saints, not coming from the popes, it's not coming from Our Lady, right? So, but why is it so commonly like within the common crowd or whatever? Like it seems to be the default sentiment. Where is this coming from? See, Saint Padre Pio, one of his brothers are saying like, why are you always praying the Rosary? Oh no, sorry. During his time, a lot of people were saying like, oh, the Rosary is just a prayer for women and just for children, just for uneducated folks. So why are you always promoting the Rosary? Then Saint Padre Pio responded, Satan always tries to destroy this prayer, but he will never succeed. It's for the people who are always victorious, right? So the Satan has something to say against the Rosary. So yeah, the spiritual authorities have spoken. Our Lady, the saints, the popes, and magisterium. And even the fallen angels, devils, right? They also speak on the Rosary. You can see this one particular case study from Annalise Michel. She's the person where Exorcism of Emily Rose, right? That famous movie. This is based off this true story, right? So you can see what some of the during the exorcism it was recorded, right, in 1976. And this is what some of the possessed demons said. Okay. So actually I have the recording. So we can see what they say. And I showed this to my 14-year-old younger brother, right? After that he was like super hyped. So yeah, he was hyped, bro. I think you will like it. But anyway, just prepare. Okay, yeah. I'll just show a bit of it. Okay, Samuel. Okay, yeah, okay, now you come at a good time. But okay, so this is what it says, okay. You see, oh yeah, but anyway, she by the way, this person, Annalise Michel, she's a good and pious holy girl. She was not a bad person. But eventually, I mean, there were visions and all that kind of thing. But Our Lady asked that would she be willing to be a sacrifice for sinners, and eventually she was, but she died lah. But there was also promises that she'll be one day raised to the altar, become canonized and that kind of thing.
Der Rosenkreuzmonat, weißt du ja, ne?
Ja,
Rosenkreuz.
aber die wenigsten beten.
Die wenigste.
Ja. Und in der Kirche wird auch mal der wenigste gebeten, weil die Herrn Pfarrer ja das für unmodern halten.
Ja,
Ja,
alle,
fast. Die sind ja so blöd, wenn sie eine Ahnung nicht haben. Ah!
was tut es für die Rosenkreuz?
Warum?
Ja, warum?
Ah! Weil
Weil ich nie Welt habe.
eine. Nein, ich sag's nicht.
Ich wird diese Idee.
Weil eine starke. Halsmaul. Ja,
Weil eine starke Waffe ist. Gegen Satan
ja,
und alle Dämonen.
ja, gegen uns. Ich muss es dir sagen.
Der Rosenkreuz ist eine gewaltige Macht gegen
Ja,
Satan und alle Dämonen.
aber das glauben nicht viele. Die halten es ja nur volles Weiberzeug. Zum Glück.
Wer ist da schuld daran?
Ja,
Ihr.
ja.
Ja.
And later on, the demon and like the 4-minute mark, it says like people must pray in the churches in the families, and above all this thing. And he said rosary, then he said yes. And so this one is screaming. So you see, even the demons, right? When it comes to the rosary, there's such a great reaction to against it. Yeah. You see, Saint Louis de Montfort says the demons have an overwhelming fear of the rosary. So maybe at this point we ask like, yeah, like why is the rosary so powerful? Isn't it just a sacramental? It's just a sacramental. So why is it, always being promoted? So we can one thing we can say is that first we can fundamentally identify it as a call to prayer. So you see what even Catechism says, this quoting St. Alphonsus, he says, those who pray are certainly safe, those who do not pray are certainly damned. And Our Lady of Corbejo, Mary, she says, I cannot help you if you do not pray. And theologians also say like, to lead us to God, the shortest and easiest and most certain is a life of prayer. But it's a basic need for prayer. So Our Lady is calling us to pray. And another thing is, so why specifically the rosary? Our Lady appeared to, well, or Father Gobi is a priest that has like locutions from Mary, okay, and has like some approvals from the cardinals and bishops. But anyway, it says the prayer. She says the prayer of my predilection is the Holy Rosary, and for this reason, in my apparitions, I always ask that it be recited. So the Rosary is like the key that unlocks all the doors. So by doing this like one thing, everything else will sort of come. It doesn't compete with other devotions. Like if I pray the Rosary, I can't do anything else. But instead, by doing it right, you get like everything else in that sense. So like for example, when you go to mass, there's this thing called like dispositive grace, where you get disposed to receive more. Yeah. So when you do prayers and other stuff like that, right, you are more disposed to receiving more from these sacraments, even confession. Yeah. So it doesn't compete, but it enhances their fruits. And it's also nice to see like the parallel some spiritual writers make between like the Rosary and David's sling. Because it's something so accessible, something so small. Even children can do it, right? Even the greatest theologians, to like a 7-year-old child, can also pray the Rosary, right? And that is how God works. He uses like small things to humble the proud. Yeah, and so it sounds just like our God lah. But he asks like simple things, but it's like also like the most powerful thing. But even like the devils are so scared of it. So now we look a bit at like the Rosary's um inter what the external authorities have said, right? So now we look at the internal perfections of the Rosary. The Rosary's body and soul. So what exactly is the Rosary, right? So the Rosary is composed of vocal and mental prayer. This is from Saint Louis de Montfort. So the Rosary is made up of two things: mental prayer and vocal prayer. The Rosary is a blessed blending of mental and vocal prayer, by which we honor and learn to imitate the mysteries and the virtues of the life, death, passion of Jesus and Mary. So it has two parts to it: the mental prayer and the vocal prayer. So first we look at the body of the Rosary, which is like the vocal prayer. So of course it's composed of like the main prayers of the Catholic Church: the Our Father, Hail Mary, Glory be, Apostles' Creed. Right, so for the Our Father, St. Thomas says it's among all prayers, the Lord's Prayer holds the chief place. Right? It's that one prayer that Jesus actually taught us. The Hail Mary is the very first words that mark the beginning of the most important event in all of history, which is the Incarnation. Through this, the whole world was saved. All the devils get dethroned because they were ruling the world. And it's like that. Saint Louis de Montfort says it's like the new song of the new covenant. Right? It's the beginning of that new covenant. It came from the words of Hail Mary. There's of course the glory be also. Our triune God is glorified. The Trinity is like the central mystery of the Christian faith also. And the Apostles' Creed is by tradition is said to be composed by the apostles themselves, and it's a shield of faith against all heretics. It's a prayer of every Christian. So these are the main prayers of the entire Catholic religion. It's all found within the Rosary. So the vocal prayers are already very powerful. Something I added also is we cannot ignore like the repetitive nature that all of us know about. There's a succession of Hail Marys. So why is it there? Because based on what I've seen from the writers, they said that okay, the repetition tranquilizes the mind and also isolates us from the noise around us. Psychologists talk about how repetitive prayers they tranquilize the mind. Okay, and yeah, so it allows us to our monkey mind to be occupied, so that it disposes us towards contemplating the meditations. Yeah, and the wisdom of repetitive prayers is found in like almost basically every religion also. We see from the Buddhist and the Eastern religions, they're also using it, and there's something because it's sort of like human nature to want to repeat certain prayers. So there's a wisdom also being played in the Rosary, and it's also not necessary to reflect on the words if you're already meditating on the mysteries. Like some people object, like, how can I reflect on the words and the mystery at the same time? A common answer often given is you don't have to meditate on the words if you're already reflecting on the mysteries. It's okay. And it's also okay to rest in the vocal prayers, because sometimes if our minds are not ready to straight away enter into the mystery, it's okay to rest in the vocal prayers because the vocal prayers themselves are already so rich, they're so powerful. So it's okay. And repetition is also a language of love. Like when people love one another, repeat the same old things and they don't get tired of it. Repetition is a language of love, and repetition is kind of like imbued in even like the whole world. Every day, there's set time for everybody eats, everybody sleeps, everybody does like the same old things over and over again. And the repetition is part of like the language of love. Like Fulton Sheen says, like, do you get tired of does a child get tired of saying to his mother like I love you many many times? No, it doesn't. So yeah, repetition is there also. And it only becomes routine if the prayers are not said as they ought to be said with like faith, confidence, and love. So some people say, oh, if I repeat too many times, I'll get bored, right? But that's not the Rosary's fault. That's your fault for not praying it properly as you ought to pray it. Yeah. And of course, there's a penitential aspect. There's a penitential aspect that I guess can't be ignored. But I'll touch on that later. Because repetitive prayers are a bit difficult to pray sometimes. This is from Maria Liz Carter from Paul VI. So he says, it's the most characteristic element, in fact, the litany-like succession of Hail Marys. It becomes in itself an unceasing praise of Christ, who is the ultimate object of both the angel's announcement, the greeting of the mother of John the Baptist. So when we say the Hail Mary, actually, it's not about Mary, actually. The main ultimate object is always Jesus. But if you count in the Hail Mary, Jesus and God and Mary are actually mentioned 3 times both each. So actually the equal number of times. So yeah. And we say that the Hail Mary constitute the walk on which the contemplation of the mysteries, on which is woven the contemplation of the mysteries. So it kind of gives you like that matter to chew on while you meditate on the mysteries. Yeah. So okay, now we move to the soul of the Rosary, the mental prayers. So you can see from the Secret of the Rosary, St. Louis de Montfort says, the saints made our Lord's life the principal object of their study. They meditate on the virtues and his sufferings, and in this way arrived at Christian perfection. And then Imitation of Christ, like the first 2 sentences, he says, if we wish to be truly enlightened and free, let our chief effort be to study the life of Jesus Christ. Right? So studying the life of Jesus is like that big thing where the saints have always stressed. And see in the Rosary, when you meditate, you're contemplating the 3 central mysteries of the faith: the incarnation in the joyful mysteries, the passion in the sorrowful, and then the resurrection in the glorious mysteries. These are the central mysteries of our Catholic faith. Right? And then, of course, Christ's holy ministry, the luminous mystery, when it was added by Pope John Paul II later. You see what even like the scripture says, set your mind on the things above, not on earthly things. And I meditate on all your works and consider what your hands have done. So because if what is not long in our minds, right, cannot long stay inside our hearts also. So when we recall to mind, then it also this also allows us to transform our own lives also. These uh, transformative mysteries. Like nobody can contemplate on these things that stay unchanged. It's basically the gospel. Right. So I really like what St. Louis de Montfort says here. The greatest desire of Jesus Christ was and still is that we remember him. With this in mind, he instituted the sacrifice of the Mass. You see, do this in memory of me. And after Holy Mass, the Rosary is the holiest action and prayer that we can offer because it is a remembrance and a celebration of what Jesus Christ has done for us and suffered for us. Right? Whenever we call to mind the mysteries of the Rosary, we're calling to mind and celebrating what he did for us. So we meditate and study and penetrate into these mysteries so that it can also reform our own lives and actions. Because the Gospels, because we're just basically meditating on the Gospels because that's the life of Jesus. And by meditating on that, there's a transformative element to it. And this is this whole really nice idea of like anamnesis, like we make present now what was in the past. So like in the Jewish Passover, right? Idea of anamnesis, we call to mind, we're making it present right now, just like in the Mass. But we do this in memory of me. It's not just like, oh, I remember what happened 2,000 years ago in the cross, because we are right there at Calvary or during the Mass itself. So when we pray the Rosary, we're kind of doing that. We do this in memory of him, and we make him present in our lives right now. The graces of those events are taking place right now through the working of the Holy Spirit. Yeah, just to stress, right? The Rosary is not just saying Our Father and Hail Marys like 50 times, okay? You must meditate on the mysteries and apply it to our own life. Right? We must meditate because if not, it will be like a body without the soul. The vocal prayers only lah. And most people sometimes they have like a superficial understanding of the Rosary. So because of that, they're like, oh, it's just for women, it's just for children, it's just lame stuff. There's nothing rich in it, you know? It's not true because the greatest minds, the greatest theologians, they could not penetrate fully into the mystery of the Rosary, fully into the mysteries lah. Because these are like infinite in depth, basically. And I really like what Father Bessier says here. It's quoted by Father Garrigou Lagrange. It says, it is not merely a series of Ave Maries, Hail Marys piously recited. It is Jesus living again in the soul through Mary's maternal action. It's Jesus living again in the soul. Right? So it's like kind of like the reference to like the idea of anamnesis. Right? He's living again in our hearts. Yeah, right now. And when we call him to mind, the graces of those events are working inside of our hearts also. So yeah, so we can see that the Rosary has the greatest vocal prayers of our church. The greatest object of mental prayer, which is the life of Jesus, contains basically like every other thing ever, like every other devotion is contained in the life of Jesus. And it's a blessed blending of the two, as St. Louis de Montfort says. It's Christ living again in your soul. Yeah. So the Rosary is also a sure and safe guide. You see, St. Louis de Montfort says, believe me, if you genuinely wish to attain a high degree of prayer in all honesty, without falling into the illusions of the devil so common with those who practice mental prayer, say the whole Rosary every day, or at least 5 decades of it. Okay? I mean, the Rosary is also part of it contains obviously mental prayer, right? Because it's part of the soul of the Rosary. But this is like a sure and safe guide. And Father William Faber, like the Catholic Encyclopedia, calls him the master of the mystical life. He said, I cannot conceive a man as being spiritual who does not habitually say the Rosary. And St. Louis de Montfort also says a whole bunch of other things basically say this kind of same thing, but paraphrasing it. But they're all saying basically the same thing. The Rosary should be there for any Catholic. And St. Louis de Montfort also says that I have found no other way of finding if a man is truly a man of God than if he really loves to say the Rosary and the Hail Mary. Yeah. And so just to put this out there, it's like the full Rosary is not just 5 decades, but 15 decades. 15 decades. So there's 15 promises which correspond to the 15 rosaries, 15 decades of the Rosary. So one daily Rosary is actually 15 decades, suppose as the norm. Like St. Louis de Montfort says, that is the norm. And St. Dominic also was told to preach my Psalter from Our Lady. She said, preach my Psalter, and the Psalter is obviously 150 psalms, right? Basically corresponding to the 150 Hail Marys. Yeah, 15 promises, 15 decades. So you can see like I just put this out there because some people think like the Rosary is just 5 decades. I mean, of course, it's still powerful and good, right? But the 15 decades is that full thing, yeah. So you can see these promises. There's the all 15 promises. I'm not going to go through all of them, but actually we see, right, they kind of encapsulate everything you've ever wanted, like in time and in eternity, everything. So whoever shall recite and serve, serving by the recitation of the Rosary shall receive signal graces. Signal graces are like little signs that Mary and Jesus gives you to sort of encourage us to pray the Rosary because, beginners, we need a little bit of that sign to like encourage us. And I myself gotten like a whole bunch of cool signal graces, which I won't share now. But I mean, if you start praying the Rosary, right, you kind of get a lot of signs. And another thing is like this wonderful contempt of the world that you get is one of the promises that it's like worldly stuff just start becoming so lame to you. Yeah, it's a grace that's given, and then I mean I will. It's one of the promises there, and I've also experienced it. So there's a whole lot of awesome promises that's given here. Yeah. Also, one thing I forgot to mention, I just want to mention it real quick. I think I accidentally hit the slide, but for the Rosary, right? Actually, let me just get up. Sorry. Yeah, when we say the Rosary and celebrate, when we say the Rosary, we celebrate in one day or 1 week all the mysteries that the Church celebrates in a year for the sanctification of her children. And so that's really cool because there's like that wisdom of the Church, obviously in its liturgical calendars in telling us about Christmas and that kind of thing. But we pray the Rosary, I guess the 15 decades or even within like 1 week, right? You pray the Rosary. It's like you are celebrating all these things in one day or like 1 week. So it's like, or it's like Christmas in the morning, Good Friday in the afternoon, and then Easter in the evening or something like that. So all these things are like always penetrating into your mind. So that's really cool. Yeah. Okay, just to mention that. Yeah. Okay, so now is there's a break time, 10 minutes. Yeah. Yeah, it's really my possible. So now this the last part we're gonna end soon already. It's like this is more than like only like 1/3 or less than 1/3 left. So some tips for praying the Rosary. So some methods of meditation. So this is one general method abstracted from the saints and the theologians. I'm getting this from another theologian who read all these things, Father Antonio Royo Marin. He just said that based on all the other writings of the different methods of mental prayer, these three components are always in like the whatever method you have. So there's a consideration where you consider a mystery in your head, right, and then the application to one's life, and then the practical resolution that you draw from the meditation, from your consideration. So for a long time, I was actually just doing the consideration, just thinking about what it was, right? But then after that, I never went to step 2 or 3, was applying it to my own life, and then making a practical resolution. Because your prayer is not complete until you, I mean, the principal fruit of your prayer is that resolution that you make so that you reform your life, right? So a long time I was just doing consideration, then I get a bit bored also. When you apply it to your own life, it's very transformative and powerful. Okay, so even this method alone, just to keep in mind while you pray the Rosary is already very, very good. I mean, it's a general method of mental prayer. And then, so these are some of the few methods you can use. So just before we look into meditations, right, you can just look at faith and good works. Sorry, faith and goodwill are most important. See what works for you. So St. Louis de Montfort says, like, when you meditate, sometimes you can't meditate as best as you can, but it's okay. The most important thing is faith and goodwill that God is most pleased with, right? And because prayer is not about like producing a product. Like the spiritual life, prayer life doesn't begin with an amazing conversation with God. It begins with you sacrificing, putting in your time and your attention for God, right? And then that's where your prayer life will begin. It's not like if you keep waiting for some amazing conversation with God, some awesome meditation, right? Then every time you feel distracted, right, you just don't want to pray. And that's not what God really wants. He just wants your will, your heart to be there and just to show up every time. Yeah. So, and also it's good to pray with pauses so you can actually sufficiently reflect on some of the words that you say as well. Okay, but some methods that I saw, you make a specific and a practical resolution so relevant to the mystery. So, for example, when you're meditating on the second joyful mystery, Mary's visitation to Elizabeth, you can see like it's an act of charity, right? So you can see, okay, I will help my mom wash the dishes today, for example, a practical resolution that's inspired from that meditation. So you actually do something with it. Or if you're meditating on like the institution of the Eucharist, the fifth luminous mystery, then later if you're going for Mass, you try to be more recollected and reverent or whatever during the Mass itself. Do you see these little things that you can do? There's another one called I call it the clause method, where you add a clause after the name of Jesus uh, in the Hail Mary. So like Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with you. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus, becoming man, for example. So this is one of the methods that you will see often recommended by saints. When Saint Louis de Montfort says this, yeah. So it's one way that you kind of make the vocal prayers reinforce the meditation itself. You can just also use obviously like rosary meditations, like sacred art, audio rosaries. Like I heard like some of my friends say they like using Halo to help them to meditate, which is also good. You can use whatever you think works. Yeah. And another one is you can also place yourself in a mystery. This is a bit like the initiation method. It's called a composition of place. You just kind of imagine. You can imagine that you're in the mystery itself. You see like the sights and sounds. You can also imagine. I also heard that. You can imagine that you're one of the characters within the mystery. You can imagine that I don't know you are Jesus carrying the cross or something. And I think there's also another interesting way to uh, look at it lah. There's also this like questioning method. I call it the questioning method, but it's just like your 5 Ws and 1 H on the people within the meditation itself. Like why is, for example, Jesus carrying the cross? Who is this who's carrying the cross? That's God. Right? Why is he carrying the cross? Because he loves me. And all these things you can really like meditate. Right? So these 5 W and 1 H is just a good way to facilitate. It's like just keep questioning and questioning. And you ask like, how does this apply to my own life? And the humility of Jesus. Am I being humble? Or what's stopping me from saying yes to God all the time? Then you find that, when these attachments that I have to my own comfort or whatever. So sometimes certain questions, they get to the heart of the matter. So it's actually really powerful. You can also, do this with like, just gaze at the living Jesus. He's also gazing back at you. And when you kind of, I guess when you, there are certain saints, they also say that when you become more advanced in your prayer life, that your prayer also becomes a bit more simplified. So sometimes it's okay to not like rack your mind trying to meditate. Sometimes it's just nice to be in the presence of God and just gaze at Jesus. He gazes back at you, and it's really nice also. And also, this is another method that I kind of just low-key made up, but it's like this particular examen and the rosary. So the particular examen is like this ignition method where it's like you find it's kind of, okay, I'm kind of just summarizing, but you find like a chief defect that you have, or maybe like a particular virtue you want to grow in. But generally the chief defect you have. So let's say it's like talking too much, for example. Then for each mystery of the rosary, right, you just somehow link that chief defect to the life of Christ somehow. Like when you just see how you can apply that particular chief defect and see how it compares to the life of Jesus. And then you might start seeing like interesting connections or meditating on the mysteries in ways that you would have never really tried to before, because it's kind of like some random defect and then you put it inside the mystery. But it's also really powerful because it's really practical. Because one, every time, if you're going to do it for every decade of the rosary, you keep calling to mind your chief defect so that you keep wanting to fight that chief defect. You don't like distribute the strength of your will over like many different defects, because if not, you'll lose like 20 different battles. But if you gather all your forces to fight that one chief defect, right, then you can start overcoming you're conquering yourself one by one. And that's like the effective way that the saints have always been recommending. So if you do that for the rosary, then it's quite powerful, because every time you pray the decade, you're asking for grace to overcome that defect also. And it's very practical also lah, because yeah, you are trying to fight the chief defect. Yeah, so hopefully that made sense. So now, like, good time to pray the rosary. One rosary can take about maybe like 15 to 20 minutes. It doesn't have to take like 30 minutes, because when we do a group rosary, I know like some people get like scared of the rosary because we feel like super long. It's okay to pray long also, but it doesn't have to be that long. Like, it can just be like 15 minutes or so. Every time I see like a spiritual writer write up, somehow reference the length of the rosary, they always say like a quarter of an hour, 15 minutes, that kind of thing. So just keep that in mind. But anyway, good times to pray. When you wake up, while you commute, lunch break, pockets of time throughout the day, you can just do like 1 or 2 decades even. Yeah, just walking around doing small, simple tasks like, I don't know, vacuuming the floor or whatever. Because you can do it during adoration, on the way to mass, on the way back from mass, in the evening, before bed, that kind of thing. My favorite time is really during commutes, because during commutes, right, you don't really do that so many important stuff. But at the same time, it just like you have a whole bunch of time, because like it takes you like 45 minutes to go to your workplace or your school or whatever. So when you commute, you really have a lot of time to actually pray. So just by doing that, right, you can just pray a whole bunch of rosaries. Yeah, some general advice like morning. Yeah, a lot of the saints say is like the most critical time for prayer, because if you start your day well, then the rest of your day can go well. If you start your day badly, right, then you just start becoming discouraged. Then you won't really continue. So the morning is really important. And of course, pray about commuting, which is what I said, because there's so much time. Like, what else would you rather do during your commute? Like, you're gonna like at most, you're just gonna message your friend, right? But if you spend your time praying, just like a way better use of your time. And you can spread your rosary throughout the day. You don't have to do like 5 decades or 15 decades in like one sitting. Spread it throughout the day, so you can keep yourself recollected as well throughout the day, and like punctuate it with prayer. And of course, there's a family rosary also. The popes talk about how like the family rosary is really like the best way to implement the rosary, because like the family is like the the most basic unit within the society. So if your family is patterned after the message of the gospel, then the rest of society also gets to be transformed, and it brings the whole family together. And it's like they say like the family is like a mini church. So yeah, you should get your family members to pray also. And you can also like start off, if anyone actually wants to pray like the 30 decades or whatever, you can just start with like maybe like one daily rosary, which is like 1% of your day. Then you can slowly work up to 4 rosaries a day if you want. But I feel like actually it's easier to pray like maybe like the 15 decades than it is to pray one, because I used to pray like just the 5 decades, but I realized that it's like it is good, but I'm a bit like neither here nor there a bit. Like, the rest of the day I'll just be doing my own stuff. Then the next day when I come back to pray, then I have to pray the rosary. But when I'm praying like the full rosary, I'm really getting the fullness of grace, I suppose. And then I'm always kind of being recollected, because I can't go too long a time without praying. So because of that, I kind of stay in that recollection. So it's easier for me to pray every time also. Then I guess you get more grace, and it's a bit more motivating. Yeah. So okay, if anyone actually does want to pray like I guess 20 decades or whatever, a good advice that I heard from other people is also like pray the first 2 rosaries by noon. It's then once if you can get the habit down, then actually it's quite not too difficult to pray the whole rosary. Yeah. And I also try not to go 2 consecutive days without praying, because I heard like apparently this study show that if you go 2 days in a row without doing a certain habit, right, then on the 3rd day, right, you probably won't continue. So it's also okay to like fail a few days, or like not to miss out a few days. That's normal when you're doing a habit, trying to grow a habit. But yeah, just try not to go on a 3-day streak without praying, without doing whatever habit you want to do. Something to keep in mind. And so, yeah, some things to keep in mind regarding discouragements and difficulties. So, this is what St. Louis de Montfort says. Be of good heart, even if your imagination has been bothering you throughout your rosary, filling your mind with all kinds of distracting thoughts, so long as you try your best to get rid of them as soon as you notice them. Always remember that the best rosary is the one with the most merit. There's more merit in praying when when it is hard than when it is easy. So yeah, basically it's like more effort, it's like more merit in that sense lah. It's not easy to pray when your mind is filled with distraction, but the fact that you still persevere through it is more pleasing to God. So meditation performed with a good will is also necessarily attended by progress in virtue. It's necessarily attended by progress in virtue. So some people think that, oh, I meditated like trash, that means this sucks, I'm not going to get any virtue. It's not true. God will remember that your efforts, and He will give you the grace to progress in virtue. So as long as you keep showing up, right, you'll be fine. And yeah, the sincere will to do what's required for meditation is in itself already a good meditation, and ensures all the fruits thereof. So yeah, like it's kind of like, something like what I mentioned earlier is prayer is not like trying to produce this wonderful, beautiful product. Just show up for God, give Him your time and your attention, and that is what God really is pleased with. Then slowly, as you keep doing that, then God will also give you the graces to, I guess, pray better or whatever. Yeah. But anyway, more it's counterintuitive because some people think that if you meditate badly, then there's less merit. But actually, the saints say that your dry prayers are actually generally the ones with the most merit. So that's something to keep in mind. And dealing with distractions, some practical steps I found is like, whenever you do get distracted, right, just keep your peace. But maybe a good attitude to have is just expect distractions. Expect distractions during your meditation. Our minds are just like that. And as long as we're trying our best, we should remain peaceful and simply draw our minds back to focusing on God whenever we find ourselves becoming distracted. And you can also use your imagination, as Saint Teresa of Avila says. Just represent the Lord himself as close to you and behold how lovingly and humbly he is teaching you. I'm not asking you to do anything more than just look at him. So just remember, basically calling to mind the presence of God. Yeah. And you can also use like a prayer book. Saint Teresa of Avila also for a long time, she was using a prayer book. She went for like 17 years without wanting to pray without any prayer book. So she's always using that prayer book. Then eventually she used it less. But yeah, the prayer books are really, really important, or like some scriptural guide or whatever, because it facilitates your understanding also, gives you matter to meditate on. Unless you're like, because most people when we're starting the spiritual life, it's like we don't have so much knowledge to know what exactly to meditate on. We don't have such profound minds. But these like other profound and advanced writers, they will guide us. And so because of that, the spiritual reading is also quite important. Yeah, so something to keep in mind is also like the rosary is an instrument of penance and purification. And think about it that way. I like what Pope Francis says here is like, pray with Mary, especially the rosary, has this suffering dimension that is of a struggle, a sustaining prayer in the battle against the evil one and its accomplices. So it's like the rosary has really this suffering dimension. If you pray the rosary, you all know like sometimes it's just like the rosary is really difficult to pray. There's that repetitive nature that's just really painful and difficult sometimes, right? And it's really that battle. Like Catechism says, like prayer is really a battle with oneself. So we should go in with that mentality that is like an instrument of penance, right? And anyway, it's season of Lent. So you can see like what Romans says, not only that, but we rejoice in our sufferings, enduring, and knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. Because I think like a lot in our day and age, like we suffer a lot with like effeminacy, where like we don't want to do the difficult, the arduous and the difficult for the sake of the good. Like because of that, like a lot of people become effeminate. But the rosary kind of forces you to like just kind of like soldier on, even if you don't want to pray, you know it's good, so you still do it. Right? That in itself is already a way to cultivate virtue. Yeah. And so I suppose there's like a wisdom in the rosary having that penitential dimension to it, because those who pray also grow in that virtue of perseverance as they pray as well. So yeah. And no one will reach heaven without suffering. A child of Mary does not reject suffering. This is from one of the quotes from Our Lady of Cabejo. But yeah, we cannot keep running away from suffering. We have to learn to embrace the cross. I think the rosary sort of have that dimension so that we can learn to become comfortable with being uncomfortable. And so become like grow spiritual maturity and this sort of thing. So yeah, some effects of the rosary is that peace and tranquility will begin to reign in your hearts. Your sinful vices will be destroyed in a super short time. Like it's really, really short. I know people, I heard rosary testimonies where people like, I don't know, they have like some pornography addiction for like 20 years straight or something. They just can't do it, can't get rid of it. Then when they start praying like the full rosary every day, right? And within like 1 or 2 months, right, they almost stop completely. Then within like 1 year, they just like never ever touch it again, ever. And they don't even, they hardly have that desire even for anything like that. And yeah, Satan can't touch you. You'll be close to God always. Our Lady will make sure that you travel rapidly under her guidance. And many souls will also be converted, because when you pray, it's not just about getting graces for yourself, right? You get graces for other people because you're praying also, right? So grace multiplies grace, so you get a lot of graces. So basically, maybe just a quick summary is why pray the rosary? God himself, through Mary, is constantly asking it of us. It's also irreplaceable, like preeminent and sure means of salvation and sanctification. That's what like you saw all those quotes, right? They were saying that basically. And virtually every spiritual authority on heaven and earth has also recommended, and it's also the devotion most recommended by the popes, save like the mass itself. And the devil is also under any condition don't want you to pray. Okay, so that's also all the more reason to pray. And we can also convert ourselves and others and society to it, because transformation of society begins with the interior conversion of your own heart. And after that, slowly you can affect other things also. And of course, we foster a relationship with Mary, which we saw was like super important. She's like the mediatrix of all grace and that sort of thing. And of course, Jesus through that. And we become supremely happy. Yeah. And yeah, just keep in mind that Our Lady is always bringing us towards Jesus. So the Rosary is really a Christocentric prayer. The Christocentric prayer. It's not like Mary is there, but she's like a secondary dimension to it. The primary thing is really, like we said, meditating on the life of Jesus. So yeah, hopefully you can make some resolution to think about it and make them like smart and sustainable. Like if you already pray the Rosary, then maybe you can, I guess, pray it with try to pray with greater enthusiasm or attention. Or if you all want, you can maybe even pray more rosaries if you all want, or just pray better, and that sort of thing. So I like what Father John Harden says here. He's like a Jesuit theologian. I'm pleading, promote the Rosary, urge the Rosary, teach the Rosary, advertise the Rosary. It's through the Rosary that we can bring back countless souls. We can bring countless souls back to Christ. So the Rosary has this like is like really that superpower lah. That's why the saints talk about it and promote it incessantly also. And of course, there's other resolutions you can make: spiritual reading, mental prayer, frequent confessions, mass and devout thanksgiving after confession, adoration, examen, that kind of thing. So of course, the Rosary is not just like the Rosary itself. The Rosary helps to integrate the whole Catholic faith also. So yeah, hopefully y'all make resolutions, and so that y'all won't like forget about this talk within like 3 weeks time or something. And yeah, so the Rosary is the weapon for our times. So hold on tightly to the Rosary. What Padre Pio said. And yeah, now Q&A time.